Thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate all those who took the time out to check me out early in the morning here on this August the 15th, 2017, 8:15:17, like a right triangle for you math heads out there. I'm Kdot. I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, um, and I call this sports talk and whatever, focusing primarily on sports topics and events, but also, as we know, beyond sports, life happens, and sometimes athletes come out and take part in terms of, political things, politics, or social events, social injustice, whatever it may be. So we'll talk about those things here as well, as those stories come out. Um, I want to start with the NFL. Obviously, football is the most popular sport here in the United States, and now we're in the preseason time in the NFL. So really, at this time, it's really all about establishing the roster, finding out who are the players that are going to make the team. They have to choose 53 players, narrow it down at the end of the preseason, to go into the regular year. And, we're finding out who's going to be the quarterback, what is going to be the order of the depth chart, all those types of things, right? The games and the scores mean absolutely nothing. There's no correlation between the team being successful in the preseason and having a great regular season or winning the Super Bowl or whatever. So we understand that the scores don't matter. The starters either don't play or play very little in the preseason games. But this preseason has been a little different because one of the members of the quarterback fraternity, Colin Kaepernick, has been not playing. His contract ended with the 49ers. He hasn't been signed by any other team. And, the reason behind it is because he took a stance about a year ago by kneeling during the national anthem. He didn't want to salute the flag. He didn't want to stand during the national anthem at the games. And, that was his position. He took a stance. And he wanted to bring up some conversation about social injustice, obviously, here with the police and things of that sort. Now the time comes for him to find a new team. No owner wants to sign him. It looks like they don't want to bring the attention or whatever to their franchise. I think it's super unfortunate. There are some coaches and general managers out there that have said they want to potentially bring in Kaepernick, at least as a backup quarterback. But the owners aren't having it. So, and the owners, a lot of them come out and say, well, there's no collusion or there's no understanding. I kind of do think there's understanding from the owners that no, nobody's going to sign. I think they kind of came up to a collective agreement on that. They haven't really came out and said what's going on, but it looks like it. And, I support Kaepernick. I'm a Kaepernick supporter. And I do think that he's done something really cool and impactful. The conversation was brought about from what he started, and it's still going on. Will there be any changes? We hope so. So I hope he gets a chance to play again. It doesn't look good, honestly. Doesn't look like he'll get signed. Hopefully he does, and he'll get a chance to continue his professional, career in the NFL if he wants to. That's been another question. A lot of people are saying, does he even want to play, or does he just want to keep his platform for social issues and things like that? So I'd like to see him out there at least as a backup, get a chance to play, and someone, overlook whatever it is, immediate attention that's going to come to the franchise by signing him. I think it will be great for him, great for the NFL, great for the franchise that signs him and everything like that. So we'll see what happens. That's obviously going to be an ongoing story. Other news here in the preseason in the NFL has been Ezekiel Elliott from the Dallas Cowboys getting suspended. That's a big deal. The NFL came down, suspending him for the first 6 games of the season over a domestic situation. Ezekiel apparently was exonerated, or there weren't any charges that he was officially deemed guilty of. So it looked like a pretty stiff penalty. It looks like the Cowboys might be in a little bit of trouble if they don't get that suspension reduced. I think he's going to appeal. So they want to get either the whole 6 games taken off or at least a reduction in the suspension. But he was the #1 NFL rusher last year, and the Cowboys obviously are relying on him to have another big season, equally as good or even better, for them to be successful this year. Obviously, they won the division last year. They're going to be looking to make a run at the Super Bowl. They think they have a Super Bowl team, and Elliott is a big part of that. So we'll see if he's successful in reducing the suspension on the appeal, or will he have to take the whole 6 games. It might be a rough year for the Cowboys, certainly at the beginning, if the suspension stays at 6. Another thing that happened this preseason, that there was a trade. The Buffalo Bills, the Los Angeles Rams, the Philadelphia Eagles got together, and this trade was made. So, first of all, the Eagles, they picked up Ronald Darby, cornerback. Now, if you watch Eagles football, I'm an Eagles fan, admittedly so, but more than the Eagles fan, I'm an NFL fan. I watch all the teams. I keep up with all the teams. I root for the Eagles, but I also like good football. So anyhow, we watch Philadelphia Eagles games, and I certainly do. It's clear that they certainly need some help at cornerback. Cornerback has not been a strong suit for them. It's one of the weak links of the team. And when you think about going up against the teams that they had to face, like the Giants with Odell Beckham, like the Cowboys with Dez Bryant, like the Redskins, who usually come at you with a multitude of receivers and a tight end, and they're, Cousins is a guy that's going to pass the ball often, and the Redskins will have some success against the Eagles in recent years, especially going downfield. Now they don't have Deshaun Jackson, and I don't think Pierre Garçon anymore, but still, they're still going to be, I'm sure, the same type of team in terms of their identity. So the bottom line is, if you're the Eagles, you need to get some help at cornerback. I don't know if Darby is going to be the answer, but he's certainly a guy that that looks like he has some promise. I don't think he didn't have any interceptions last year for the Bills. So I don't know if he's a guy that's going to get a lot of interceptions. That's certainly something that I look for in cornerbacks. And, secondary players in general, safeties as well, but definitely cornerbacks. So I'm not certain if he's going to be a big help. It never hurts, to bring in a guy and see what he can do. He looks like he has some promise. He's very young in his career. I think he's only in his 3rd year. So they're going to give him a chance to get out there and see if certainly the Eagles can have some improvement there at the cornerback position. Now, the Rams, they picked up Sammy Watkins, the wide receiver formerly with Buffalo. A guy with a lot of talent. A guy that has shown some promise, but he's also been injured. He had, I think, 28 receptions and 2 touchdowns. I mean, very, very mediocre numbers for especially somebody that's supposed to be a star wide receiver. It's because he wasn't on the field. He only played like 8 games. He wasn't out there often enough. He's certainly not reliable in terms of him being available to play because of the injury history. So it's a big risk, I think, for the Rams to go after him. They traded away, I believe, a 2nd-round pick to get him. Now, he's a first-rounder. He's a first-rounder by where he was drafted, and many believe he's a first-round talent. But if you can't play and you can't stay on the field, that's certainly a huge risk I think they're taking. Now, they got this quarterback, Jared Goff, who they drafted, the 1st-round pick, and they really haven't had any go-to wide receivers for him to throw the ball to so that they could really see what he can do. So Watkins is their answer to see, okay, Goff, do you have something? If Watkins can actually stay on the field, that's the question. So that's the Rams' point of view. Now the Buffalo Bills, they picked up 2 players, Gaines from the Rams at cornerback, Jordan Matthews at wide receiver from the Eagles. So, and they picked up 2 draft picks, a 2nd-rounder from the Rams and a 3rd-rounder from the Eagles. Me personally, I actually like the Bills' perspective in this trade. They traded away a wide receiver and they traded away a cornerback but they gained a wide receiver, gained a cornerback, and gained 2 draft picks. Now, EJ Gaines and Ronald Darby are very similar in terms of their numbers. Darby is looked at as a more polished, more talented player, but numerically, it's not a big drop off from Darby to Gaines if you're the Bills. You pick up Jordan Matthews, again, as Eagles fan. I know a little bit about Jordan Matthews. He has had some. He's been on the field. He's been the leading receiver. At the time during the time he's been on the team. And from what I see, he'll make a terrific play, and then he'll come up with some drops or drop a touchdown or something. So he's been incredibly inconsistent with that, in my view. But he's averaging, I think, 75 receptions and about 900 yards and about 6 touchdowns. So doing 75 catches, 900 yards, 6 touchdowns. Not spectacular, not superstar numbers, but very solid. And if you're the Bills, you're taking that because, unfortunately, Watkins hasn't been able to stay on the field. He's been unhealthy. He's been unreliable. And Jordan Matthews is, at this point of his career, a more reliable player. Certainly not a better wide receiver overall if they're both healthy, but he's been a more reliable player. And the Bills are looking at it from the standpoint, okay, we got to start moving forward. Watkins is a high-priced player. He's going to look for big money in free agency, and they're not going to be able to resign him. He ain't resigning with the Bills. He might not even resign the Rams, but we'll see. But so they were looking, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of him while we have a chance and get something for him. So they gave up a wide receiver in the corner, and they picked up a wide receiver in the corner and a second and third round draft pick. So I really, really like the Bills in this trade. I think they got the best of it in my view. Going back a little bit real quick just came across my mind momentarily about the Kaepernick situation. One of the things that I thought was very interesting is that I think the owners in the NFL kind of wanted to get that taste out of their mouth of Kaepernick not saluting the flag, kneeling, and that type of thing. So they've kind of ousted him from the NFL for right now. We'll see if he gets another shot. But it was real interesting, and there's been some talks about it, about some other players stepping in. We saw Marshawn Lynch. He refused to stand during the anthem. He just joined the Raiders. And then they had Michael Bennett from the Seahawks. So they have some other players that's like Kaepernick is not there doing it anymore, but now they got some other players that stepped in and said, hey, we're not going to let the conversation die. We're going to keep this thing going. Kaepernick might not be in the NFL, but Bennett and Lynch are. And now they kind of picked up where he left off, and the conversation continues. And I think that's a great thing. Kudos to Michael Bennett, Marshawn Lynch, and whoever else. There may be more players that have done it. There may be more that decide to do it. And we'll see that that's going to be an ongoing story. It really is. As long as anyone is not saluting a flag or standing during the anthem or things of that sort, anytime that happens, first of all the networks, they're going to be looking for it. Any network that's showing NFL games, they're going to be looking to see now they might not necessarily put the camera specifically on the person, but they're going to be paying attention. There's going to be people that's going to be paying attention to who's doing it, who's not doing it, and they're going to ask questions. They were interviewing. I saw them interviewing Michael Bennett about it. They're going to be interviewing players. Hey, why didn't you stand during the anthem? Are you in kudos with Kaepernick? All those types of questions. So they got to be ready for that backlash as well. And but I think it's going to be an ongoing thing as long as there's any type of players that are willing to do that. I think it's a great thing. Kudos to them, and I think it's a conversation that needs to continue until some things change. And there are some players and some athletes willing to step up to make a change or to be a part of a change. So I salute them for that. I want to move on to the NBA. Now, admittedly, the NBA is my favorite sport. I love the NFL also. Basketball is my number one love. So I love the NBA. I think the NBA has been excellent in the playoffs. The regular season has been, a lot of people were thinking that an NBA, regular season didn't matter. Players were sitting out games a lot last year. When LeBron James started doing it, it became a bigger issue. LeBron came out and said, hey, it wasn't no big deal when the Spurs and them were doing it. Other people were doing it. But as soon as I start missing some games, all of a sudden it's a big issue. It sort of kind of did look like they made a bigger deal about it when he started doing it, honestly. And then they have the thing going on where a lot of people was like, listen, even I was one of them. Like, this thing is over. It's going to be Cavaliers versus Warriors in the finals. I don't even know why we playing. We just going through the motions. And that's kind of how it turned out. Congratulations, the Warriors won the championship. Durant was the MVP. So now we're on to a new season. One of the things that caught my attention about the NBA is that the summer league was like bigger than ever. Now you had Lonzo Ball, who's been the talk of the rookie class. Obviously, he was the number 2 pick. He wasn't number 1. Fultz went to the 76ers after they made the trade with the Celtics and got drafted first. But Lonzo Ball has been the talk of the draft, not only because of his superstar potential, but also because of his pops. And, LeVar has come out, and he's definitely, I'll say this, a lot of people, have a lot of jokes and things about LeVar. He's come out and done a lot of things that a lot of people haven't liked. I personally think about LeVar is that he's done an incredible job of marketing his son and his family. And if that was his goal, congratulations, LeVar, you pulled that thing off. Because they've gotten a lot of publicity. They've gotten a lot of attention. And it's been far more than just Lonzo's talent or his other boys' talent. LeVar has been making a big deal, going on radio shows, going on TV shows. He's willing to make a fool out of himself or whatever. I even saw him have some type of 3-point shootout or some type of shooting contest with Ice Cube the other day. So that was very interesting. And Ice Cube won the shooting contest, but I watched it. It was awful. They both were missing almost everything. I think it was LeVar 1 and Ice Cube 2 or something like that. So it wasn't very pretty to watch. And LeVar is putting his hands up like he won the thing. He's celebrating even though he lost. It was real weird in my view. But again, getting to my point about it, LeVar's been willing to put himself out there. I think for the benefit of Lonzo, who's a lot more quiet and reserved, but looks like he could be a superstar player. And we're going to talk more about that as the NBA moves on, getting to the preseason. But the Lakers won the Summer League. Lonzo was the MVP. He looked terrific. Had a couple of triple doubles during the Summer League. You don't want to read too much into it in terms of, I don't know, I don't think it's going to necessarily translate into a lot of triple doubles in the real NBA game, but he showed off his arsenal. He showed that he can shoot, he can pass, obviously. He can rebound. His shooting, let me recheck what I said when I say he can shoot. His shooting is not very good, but he can score some points. Obviously, he was a lot more effective when he took the ball to the hole. His shooting was kind of erratic. He hit some threes, but he shot some poor percentage games as well. So a lot of people talk about his form being the big issue in terms of his shooting, and he might, for some of these lockdown defenders, he might have some trouble either getting the shot off or certainly shooting a good percentage. When the real NBA season starts. So that's something we're going to be looking at. Speaking of, I spoke on LeVar Ball and Ice Cube earlier. Kudos to Ice Cube for the Big 3 tournament. I think that's terrific. That is really, really cool. I didn't get a chance to watch all the games. I watched a few. Being a 76ers fan at heart, and Allen Iverson being like one of my all-time favorite athletes, it was awesome to see him out there. It was a shame when the tournament came to Philadelphia and he didn't play. That was a bummer because the crowd certainly. Listen, he's the face of the league, but besides Ice Cube, Allen Iverson was the reason that most of the people were coming to the games. Especially, he's the #1 attraction, particularly when he comes to Philadelphia for sure. So that was a disappointment. But overall, I think it's fun. It's a chance for us to see some more basketball. Some of the guys that we're familiar with getting a chance to play. It's a 3-on-3 tournament, so it's half court. Not a bunch of up and down, and guys can still ball a little bit. They might not be able to play 5-on-5, 4-court, 48-minute NBA game, but you can get out there and still show what you got. And for those who grew up on the basketball courts like I did, you know how it's like playing a 3-on-3 game in the half court. A lot of us grew up on that, myself included. So that's really cool. I think it's fun to watch. Shout out to Ice Cube for putting that together. I think it's terrific, and it has some longevity. They'll be able to do it more often and have more athletes come in. He talking about trying to bring in Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant. I think Gilbert Arenas, whoever else. So some of the retired players, they might be retired from the NBA, but we'll still be able to see them play a little bit. So that's going to be really cool. Another NBA topic, and it's been a big deal, is about Kyrie Irving and him requesting to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers. My goodness. We know that Kyrie has been a star player with the Cavs, and he was a big part of what they've done with the last three, NBA Finals appearances, and obviously the championship that they won in 2016. But he wants out, and the word is that he doesn't want to play with LeBron James anymore. That is not a popular opinion because most people want to play with LeBron. It's not a lot of people saying, you know what, about that LeBron thing, let me move on. So, but Kyrie Irving has decided that he's ready to move on with his career. Apparently, he wants to be a superstar, elsewhere and be the man, be the number one player. For most teams in the NBA, or at least I don't want to know if I say most, maybe half or more, but I'll say a good portion of NBA teams. When you bring in Kyrie Irving, he's going to be the star of the team, for many teams. I'll say it that way. And he wants that opportunity. Now, word is that he went privately and tried to quietly go to the owner, Gilbert, and say, hey, I want out, I'm ready to move on. And he didn't want it to be a big deal, and the work got out. Unknown whether it was LeBron James people, obviously they say no, whether it's the owner himself or, one of his confidants. We don't know how the work got out. I don't think it's a big deal that the word got out. I think that the word was going to get out one way or another, because if Kyrie's asking for a trade and you're trying to look into that, word's going to get out that you're shopping him or that you're asking around, seeing what you're going to get for him. Cleveland's put out there what they want. They want a young player. They want a veteran player. They want, first round top, draft picks or whatever. So that's what they want. It's a lot, and you're going to get a lot for Kyrie Irving. He's established himself as one of the premier players. My personal take on that is this: Kyrie Irving is, star player when he's next to LeBron James. On his own, not sure about that. I do remember, and you can go back and look at it, look it up for yourself. I remember when Kyrie Irving was the star of the Cavaliers before LeBron arrived. He acted like he never been the number one player before. No, he was the number one player for about 4 seasons before LeBron arrived, and the Cavaliers were awful. Like, look this up. The 76ers were better than the Cavaliers during that span of time. And that's bad. And they had multiple years in which they had the number one pick after Kyrie, who was already a number one pick by himself, so yeah, we've seen this before. Now, he was a young player. I'm not going to say the same thing is going to happen, because he was a younger player. That was the beginning of his career. Now he's a veteran. Now he's in his prime. So I'm not going to say they're going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA with this new team, but I don't see Kyrie going to some team and all of a sudden that team is going to be in the championship. Because the way I look at it is certainly right now, if he goes to a Western Conference team, he's going to have to go up against Golden State and Houston and San Antonio, unless he joins one of those teams. Word is that he wanted to join the Spurs. So we'll see. If he joined the Spurs, okay, obviously they're going to be in the mix. And then the other team, like it was talking about the Clippers or the Timberwolves or the Suns, these other teams, no chance of any of them having a shot at challenging for anything other than a playoff spot, but nothing serious. And then if he goes to the Eastern Conference team, word is that he liked the idea of going to the Knicks. They're not going to be able to do nothing with the Cavaliers. Shoot, not even the Celtics or the Wizards or whatever. So I think that Kyrie's intentions is to be the man and to go elsewhere and to see what he can do. I don't know if he thought this thing all the way through, because I certainly see, unless it's the Spurs, I certainly see some losing in Kyrie Irving's future if he leaves the Cavaliers. That's my take on that. Um, Getting to a topic a little bit outside of sports, but certainly some athletes have weighed in on it. And this is under the other category or the in whatever category, um, was the situation with the white supremacists out in Charlottesville, Virginia, um, and President Trump apparently weighed in on it. He took his time about speaking out against it and speaking out against, the people who are racist out there. It's terrible. I mean, on that note, it's difficult for me to say anything that hasn't already been said. It looks bad. It is bad. It's awful. The main reason I brought it up is that, from a sports connection standpoint, one of the athletes did come up against it. Chris Long, who is the son of Howard Long, who's a legendary sports figure. And Chris Long now plays for the Philadelphia Eagles, so he's one of my boys or whatever. And but he was with the Patriots, won the Super Bowl last season, just transferred over to the Eagles this year, and he weighed in on it. And he's a Caucasian player, he's a white man, and the big deal, my understanding, and if I have any information that's not factual or am I missing something, you guys out there feel free to comment or correct me or send in any information that could help me to straighten out. But my understanding of the situation was that the group got together because they were protesting, they were against the fact that a decision was made to remove the statues of Jackson and Lee, who were part of the Confederacy. And they have statues of them down there that are scheduled to be removed, and people were not happy that they were being removed because that's a part of the history, and they don't want for that history to be removed or whatever. That's my understanding of what happened. And then there was this march or whatever, or protest, whatever event that they had with white supremacists or whatever. But Chris Long weighed in on it, defensive lineman for the Eagles, and now he is from, apparently, Charlottesville, Virginia is his home. He went to the University of Virginia, to play football, which I'm pretty sure the University of Virginia is in Charlottesville. So that's his hometown, home area, and that's why he felt the need to weigh in on it. And a lot of people were coming at him and saying, well, stick to sports, and excuse me, and things of that sort. And he wasn't having it. And kudos to him for that, because, there's a lot of people out there that say, stick to sports. And he say, hey, do you stick to your profession? Do all of you stick to just your profession? And obviously it's not true, because if you're weighing on something in sports or weighing on something else, then you're not necessarily sticking to your profession. And we all have opinions on other issues, and I think that it's okay for someone to state their opinion, and it's also okay for someone to disagree. And I think part of that is that a healthy conversation can always be had about something. It's just, unfortunately, some people don't want to have healthy conversations. They want to, allow it to escalate to violence or hatred and all these other things, which is really detrimental and terrible, and it looks bad, and it is bad, and it's awful for our society. But Chris Long talked about being a role model, talked about athletes being role models, and, he wasn't having all this stick to just sports. He spoke out against it. He spoke out against Trump and against racism, and kudos for him, not only as a white man who's willing to step up and say something, and we have not had, in my opinion, enough of that going on, particularly in the sports realm. So he's an athlete, he's a white athlete that's willing to talk up against this. I think that's great. Thanks for being a representative of a person who talks against the injustices that are going on and these racist-filled events and things going on. So he spoke up against it, and he made a quote that I thought was terrific. And he said, we should think about what we're saying, then speak, and speak wisely. Kudos to Chris Long for that. That was a great quote. And I'm going to wrap it up here. I do want to talk later on in another episode more about the NBA schedule, which I know just came out. I didn't get to it in this show. I will get to it in the future, along with other things that are going on. Please, all those who like the show, dislike the show, like what I talked about, didn't like it, feel free to comment. Feel free to speak your piece. Thank you for the support. God bless you all. Peace and love.